Okay, welcome everybody to a class on commas. Now, in the UK, for a very long time, commas have been taught simply by saying two things: lists, pauses. Now, I don't think that's been very helpful. I don't think that editors have lists, pauses in their mind, and neither do proofreaders. They actually have a more complicated list of reasons for using a comma. And we're going to look at why commas are used, and not only will we look at why commas are used, but also we will see them being used like this in the books, yeah, in 1984, in Frankenstein, in Lord of the Flies, because I want to convince you that commas are not used willy-nilly whenever you think there might be a pause there, but they're actually used according to certain rules, according to certain guidelines. So firstly, yes, they are used in lists, yeah? And this is something we have already covered on this course. I want to revise everything we've covered and maybe add a few other things which you might not know about commas. But they're certainly used for lists, it's true. Lists of nouns are the most obvious one. But lots of people don't recognise lists of verbs as a list, but it's still a list. So it's worth remembering that a list can be anything. It could be a list of prepositional phrases. It could be a list of absolute phrases. It could be a list of participles like we've got here. You know, the list can literally be anything. And so try not to oversimplify the idea of lists needing commas, because actually it's quite complicated. So let's have a look. Remember that it's only lists of coordinate phrases. For example, if you've got a list of adjectives like an expensive metal saw, if you can't change those adjectives around, they're not coordinate and you mustn't use a comma. But if you can, have a look at this from 1984. The face gazed up at him, comma, heavy, calm, protecting. Now we need these two commas because we've got 1, 2, 3 coordinate adjectives. You could use those in any order, I'm sure you agree. So what about this one? Well, this one is to show that the adjectival phrase goes back to describe the face. This comma is very similar to the way we use a comma before a participle when it goes back to an earlier noun. Well, just like a participle, this is adjectival, yeah, and the three adjectives are describing face, yeah, and that's why we need that comma there as well. Let's look at some other lists. I escaped from them to the room where lay the body of Elizabeth. Yes, this is Frankenstein. My love, my wife, so lately living, so dear, so worthy. Now I hope you can see here we've got a list of 3 noun phrases, and so that is called an appositive. Let's not forget these things that we learnt about in the very first classes. Appositives are lovely things to use in your writing, and if you're not using them, shame on you. So we've got Elizabeth, who is my love, who is my wife, and we've got commas between them because these are non-defining appositives. We're not telling the person which Elizabeth. It's clear. The doctor, Dr. Frankenstein, it's his wife, isn't it? It's Elizabeth. It's clear who he's talking about. So he's not defining which Elizabeth, and that's why we need the commas for a non-defining appositive. And we've got non-defining relative clause down here, but I want to remind you that non-defining appositives certainly need commas as well. We will need a second class on commas, and we'll fill the board up again with examples, but we'll need a second class to completely explain all the reasons that you might want to use a comma. So we've got 3 appositives with commas, they're non-defining, and then we've got so lately living, that's describing Elizabeth. So dear, that's describing Elizabeth. So worthy. And I hope you can see that these could be used in any order. I mean, with the so there being repeated, it should be really clear that they are totally equal. We've got so, adjective, so, adjective, so, adjective. I know lately is an adverb, I know, but living is an adjective. So lately living means, you know, recently alive, yeah? So lately living, so dear, so worthy. They're 3 coordinate adjectivals describing Elizabeth. So that's why you've got all of these commas in that sentence. Okay, it's not just appositives that can be listed, or adjectives or adjectival phrases. It's even